a ratio is a comparison of two quantities using division. So for example, ratios, maybe we might do dollars and hours, or we might do boys to girls or something like that. So a ratio is going to compare two things, and we're going to use division. So sometimes a ratio is set up as a fraction. Sometimes a ratio will be written out with the words to or with a colon. Ratios will always be written in lowest terms. So we're going to start out with having some scenarios and then reducing down our situation and writing them out in the three different formats. Okay, so here's our first scenario. 16 dogs to 12 cats. So the key thing to remember is when you're working with a ratio and you have a word problem, you go in the order that it's stated. So working left to right, if I'm going to work in these two formats, I would do 16 dogs first to 12 cats. Now here's the thing. I cannot go through and leave this as my final answer because that can be reduced down. 4 would go into each of those numbers. So 16 divided by 4 would give me 4 dogs to 2, or not, sorry. 4 would go into 12 3 times, so to 3 cats. Okay, if we were going to use a colon, it's going to be the same format, only instead of the word 2, we would have a colon. And if I'm going to do the fraction, left to right is top to bottom, so my fraction would look like this, 4 to 3. And I would leave that as an improper fraction when I'm working with a rate or a ratio. Okay, so let's try another one. "35 girls to boys." So girls, colon, boys. So girls to boys. So in this case, 5 would go into each of these. So 5 would go into 35 7 times and into 15 3 times. Now when I write this out, it's either written out as 7 to 3, 7 colon 3, or 7 over 3. Okay, usually these two are the most common ones used when working with ratios and comparing two numbers. A fraction can be used, but it's not used as often. Okay, so this next one, you're going to go ahead and solve out on your own. So on your whiteboard or your sheet of paper, let's do 25 to 45. So the ratio of 25, we'll say markers to 45 pencils. So I want you to go ahead and do the ratio for this scenario. Okay, so here 5 would go into each of those. So 5 would go into 25 5 times and into 45 9 times. So our ratio was 5 to 9. Okay, so that's working with a ratio and simplifying it. So our next thing that we're going to work with is what they call a rate. So a rate is a ratio of two quantities with different units. So if we're working with, for example, here, words and minutes. So we want to figure out our words per minute. So usually a rate, we have that division bar, not usually, always. And lots of times when we discuss what the label is, we use the word per for that division. So like, for example, if I were to read this, I would read this right here as 60 miles per 2 hours. A unit rate, on the other hand, is just reducing to lowest terms. And it's a unit rate is always over 1 or 1 unit. So here we've got 297 words. So 297 words per 5.5 seconds. Okay, left to right is top to bottom. So now when I do this, I want to change this into its unit rate or its reduced form. So this little bar right here means to divide. So on my calculator, I can go ahead and punch in 297 divided by 5.5, and that's going to give me my unit rate of 54. So my final answer is 54 words per, and when we reduce it, we're reducing it to over 1, and then that would be second. Now, this is probably more commonly written like this, 54 words, and I'm just going to put a W for my words, per, so slash mark is often used, second. And you can use the word per also. instead of the slash mark. Okay, this is written out as a unit rate, and you have to understand that these two here are interchangeable. Okay, you could see it either way, those are a unit rate. Okay, so let's try another one. Find the unit rate for $9.60 for 4 pounds. So maybe you're buying 4 pounds of hamburger at the grocery store. So we're going to start out left to right is top to bottom. So $9.60 per 4 pounds. And I'm just going to use LB for pounds. But make sure you leave a space in there so you don't think of that as 41 instead of 4, because I oftentimes do that. So now when we divide this out or change it to its unit rate, top divided by bottom. So $9.60 divided by 4 gives me 2.4. So I have to remember that when I'm working money, I have to have 2 numbers behind the decimal, which means I have to add a 0. So $2.40 per 1 pound. Okay, that can also be written like this, $2.40 per LB or pound. So you are spending $2.40 per pound on whatever this was that you were purchasing. All right, so let's have you guys try one on your own. So here we have 180 miles in 3 hours. So you can pause your video and work your way through this one and get it down to its unit rate. And sometimes you guys will see that M/H as MPH for miles per hour. So sometimes the word per, they just put the P instead.